Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, we may have reached the low point of Dylan Carlson's career with the Cardinals on Friday night. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you here Saturday morning, July 27th, 2024. We've got a tough one to break down today as the Cardinals, I think, suffered one of the most disappointing and frustrating losses of their season last night. 10-8 in extra innings at the hands of the Washington Nationals. Sonny Gray was on the mound, so you figure if you score 8 runs, that should be enough. It wasn't enough as Sonny didn't have his best start, which is the continuation of a recent trend, unfortunately. We'll hear from Sonny Gray because his postgame was interesting, to say the least. It always is with Sonny Gray. Standing there in the clubhouse waiting for Sonny to come out with the other reporters. Last night I said, well, this is about to be interesting. Because I didn't mean that in a derogatory way. You just know that Sonny is built a little different. He's wired a little differently. And so when he struggles, there's going to be a frustration factor, and you never really know what you're going to get. Last night, a little bit vague about talking about what he needed to do to fix what's going on for him, but he reiterated multiple times that he knows what it is. So I will let y'all hear for yourself, play some of that audio from the clubhouse. I was down there last night covering the game for KMOV. By the way, that's why I didn't podcast last night. I was still writing my story at like 2 a.m. last night. I just had to prioritize my sanity, and I said I'll do it in the morning. So hopefully y'all still enjoy this podcast. Night game on Saturday makes it a little bit easier. It's not like we have a turnaround where they're playing at noon today. So that'll hopefully help everybody to get to digest this podcast. And we'll break down, too, the Dylan Carlson stuff. I mean, that was probably Dylan's worst game of his career. And I understand that it's been weighing on him probably this season, the dilution of his role and the fact that he doesn't really have one with the Cardinals at this stage. And then when he gets into the games lately, it seems like there's just zero confidence on kind of knowing what he needs to do with that first step in the outfield. Like, offensively is one thing. To struggle the way that he has this season offensively, he had a good spring training, as you guys recall, and then the collision with Jordan Walker in right center field against the Cubs in Mesa, Arizona, like a day or two before the season, puts him on the injured list to begin. I feel like the Cardinals did kind of rush him back, but that's not really, at this point, we can make excuses and we can talk about the reasons that it's been a struggle for Dylan Carlson, but at this level, eventually you're judged on your production. And we can also talk about how he's probably not very sharp because he hardly ever gets into games. Eventually at this level, you are judged on your production, and there's, a couple other 1,000 players that are vying for the opportunity that he's in right now. And so eventually, you just have to sort of figure it out and find a way. And unfortunately, Dylan has not been able to do that lately. And defensively is where I think it's almost a more glaring concern, because Cardinals have a lot of guys that will go in the lineup on a day-to-day basis and go 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts and take bad ABs. He took bad ABs last night. But defensively, just the first step is really concerning. It's as though when the ball comes his way, it's like the panic alarm sounds immediately, and you just don't know what you're going to get from him. There are times, and people say, oh, he's a bad player. He's a bad outfielder. And I'm like, I see what you guys see right now. I'm not trying to make excuses for that. And my tweets last night, I'm going to explain as well, where I said I'll buy everybody's Dylan Carlson stock tonight. I'll explain why I said that. I think some people misinterpreted what I was getting at with that comment. But I will explain that and give my answer for what I think the Cardinals should do with Dylan Carlson. And maybe by the time you're listening, that a move might have already been made. But I'll just kind of give my 2 cents on that and discuss the play last night that ultimately led to the Cardinals losing this game 10-8 against the Nationals. Whether that was there's some debate over whether it was as bad of a play as maybe online Twitter people were making it out to be. I'll give my take on it. 47% hit probability. John Denton of MLB.com put that out. I'll talk about the differences between hit probability and catch probability. I'm not an expert, but I do think I can steer some of that conversation, because doing it on Twitter was useless last night. There were people that were mad, but they didn't even really know why they were mad, because the stat they were looking at maybe wasn't the stat that they thought they were looking at. So I'll try to explain in layman's terms as best I can, because I don't understand it perfectly myself, what's going on there. So that's all coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. We also got to talk about one thing that Ollie Marmol harped on last night as per the reason for the loss, and I think he was right, but what are they going to do about it is sort of an execution question when it comes to the walks that were given out in the game and the inability to hold base runners last night. The Washington Nationals took grand advantage of I'm not even going to say Pedro Pajes. It was on the pitchers last night by and large. Pedro did throw one guy out, Lane Thomas, at one point stealing second base, but Nationals runners went 6 for 7 last night on stolen bases. And in the 7th inning against Andrew Kittredge, C.J. Abrams single-handedly produced a run, essentially, that tied the game. And that's why we had the extra innings in the first place. So all that's coming up. We're going to try to do it in a clean half hour or so because I don't want to take up too much of people's time now that it's another game going to be played tonight at Busch Stadium, as the Cardinals really need to get on the stick. I mean, they got to find a way to beat the Nationals behind Kyle Gibson on Saturday night. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. I think we'll start with Sonny. We'll start with Sonny Gray because before Carlson's 10th inning escapades, that was, I think, the thing that was most prominent on people's minds, the struggles of Sonny Gray and how, although Ollie Marmol said uncharacteristic last night, and I heard some people say, the postgame was a little bit spicy from Ollie because the reason I think this played out that way is he was asked a general question about the game. He kind of had a meandering answer that incorporated his thoughts on Sonny Gray, and then another reporter asked specifically about Sonny's outing, and Ollie said, I kind of already covered that. But I think you do have to, it's warranted to ask a specific question about the starter. It was just it was kind of like a stream of consciousness for Ollie Marmol because he's got all the thoughts of why that game was lost running through his head. And so even though the first question wasn't specific to Sonny, he answered about Sonny. And then when somebody asked about it, he's like, I already said that. And so that's not like actually spiciness. Ollie was actually, I asked him a question following up on what he had to say about the holding the runners problem, and he gave a good answer to that. So we might play that here in a little bit. But let's start with Sonny Gray, because when you look at his numbers recently, really over the past month, you could go back to June 29th. And today's July 27th, so we're talking a month of Sonny Gray having an ERA of 6.67 over that 5-start span. And in 4 of the 5 starts, he's allowed 5 or more runs. Now, one of those games, only 3 were earned, but he allowed 6 total. Only went, whatever he went in that game, 5 innings. Had a 4 1/3 innings. Like, it's just been, you have over a month by the time he makes his next start where he will have a 6.67 ERA in that span. Now, the All-Star game is incorporated in that, so fewer starts than usual in a month. But it's undeniable at this point that Sonny Gray has been on the struggle bus. And that's not what any of us expected when we saw him come off the IL in April and dominate like a Cy Young candidate that he was last year for the Twins. It just has been, it's been inexplicable from Sonny Gray lately. And at first he put it, I think he said, well, I'm not putting up zeros. That's about the long and short of it. But with Sonny Gray, he's always got a lot of thoughts running through his head. So the questions he was asked, tried to come up with an answer for what's going wrong. I'm going to play you a few minutes of Sonny Gray's postgame. It didn't last terribly long, but for those who want to be taken into the clubhouse, I was there last night, and here's what it sounded like from the Cardinals starter, Sonny Gray.
Physically, I felt good. Gave up a couple there in a second, and then I compounded one mistake into another where I don't back up home and I cut the ball off. Maybe have a chance to throw the dude out. That's on me. I physically I feel good. I just not putting up zeros right now.
So your last 5 starts have been kind of rough. Do you think they're honing in on certain pitches, or do you need to mix anything up? Or
no, I know what I need to do. I just have to do it, and I just have to commit to doing it, and I will.
You're going to hear Sonny talk like that a lot, by the way. That was sort of the phrase he continued to reiterate. And I saw some people online sort of picking on that and saying, well, why weren't you doing what you needed to do 5 starts ago? Why is it just now that you need? I think let's not get too deep into it. If a guy's in a struggling period, there is always going to be that reset, maybe wake-up call. And he'll continue to talk about how that maybe was what last night can be for him. And we'll continue to hear Sonny here.
When you say that, Sonny, is that something physical with you, whether it's delivery or whatever? What do you look at when you know what it is?
No, I you'll see. You'll see what it is. You guys have probably been around me enough. Like I said, I know what I need to do. I just have to commit to doing it and live it every day. And starting tomorrow, I'll start doing that again.
Yeah, but again, please don't get mad that Sonny Gray. What do you mean he's not committed to doing it? Like, this is just his process, I think, of talking through. And I understand if you're mad at this, that's fine. You're a fan. You can have any feeling you want. But I didn't hear that and go, oh my gosh, Sonny admitted that he's not trying. It's a long season, and I think he's hit a wall a little bit, is probably the most simple way to put it. And at that point, you have to really, it can be difficult. I mean, it seems like the obvious thing. Well, focus on every detail. Don't be in the wrong spot, cutting off a ball in the second inning that I said immediately. I even tweeted it. I said, I don't really know why Sonny cut that off. I don't think they would have got him at home anyway, but I don't really understand what he was doing there. And it was the first thing he brought up after the game. Now, is that something that can linger for a guy, and maybe that's the mental fortitude he needs to have to say, Sonny, look, if this happened in the second inning, you don't need to carry that with you all the way through your start, and then you're still stewing on it in the postgame to where that's the first thing you talk about. Now, maybe I'm being unfair in that critique. It's not even a critique so much as I'm just trying to analyze, what might be going through his head. But that's part of it, where he says, I just have to rededicate and kind of focus on those little details. He said, you guys have been around me. We all kind of know the Sonny experience at this point, and it's a marvel when it's going well because of he's a freak of nature, let's be honest. Like, he's a little different. He goes about things in a way that you respect the hell out of when it's going well. But when it's not, he's going to be his own biggest critic. And he's saying, the quiet part out loud for some people because he doesn't have a quiet part. He just says kind of what's going on. Even if he's being a little bit vague about it, he's going to fall on the sword himself and say, I've got to be better. I've got to focus on these things that I know historically have made me good. More from Sonny here.
You've told us, like, you've made it as a career throwing the ball down the middle, like your stuff's good enough. Is it hard to do with hitters this good to get away with pitches down?
No, it doesn't have, in my opinion, it doesn't have anything to do with any of that. It has everything to do with me. And like I said, I know deep down, I know what I have to do. And it's just a matter of me committing to doing it on an everyday basis. Mm-hmm. And starting tomorrow, I'll get back to doing it.
Sonny, when you say that you compounded one mistake into another, that doesn't seem to be the kind of pitcher that you've been throughout your career. When you're reflecting over this game and you recognize that, is that kind of a wake-up call on doing the things that you're talking about?
I think so. You give up a hit, and then you stand there in the middle of the field like, shame on me, look at me, this and that. Yeah, like I said, I know what I need to do, and I know what I have to do in order to be a great pitcher. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy, but I'll commit to doing it again.
I think you had the best ERA in baseball over the second half of last season. Is now that time where, the team's trying to make a playoff push that you have to take it to another level? Forgive the cliche.
That's my plan, at least. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy, but I'll commit to doing it again.
Is that a situation, Sonny, where as the season gets longer, we get deeper into it, almost August now, where you need a check like that to remind yourself, this is the commitment I have to make, this is the routine I have to have? Is it just as simple as that? Like, it's a long season, it's hard to maintain it. You got to drag yourself back to it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Cardinals starter Sonny Gray, his postgame last night after a tough outing, right? 5 runs allowed, over 5 innings pitched. He could have been made the winner, though, if not for what we saw in the 7th inning. So let's take you to that, because that's pertinent to the Ollie Marmol quote I'm going to play. And by the way, shame on me for not mentioning this early. There was a positive to be taken from last night. Paul Goldschmidt with career hit number 2,000. So I am going to talk about that a little bit, maybe after we get done with some of the negatives, because we can end on a high note and something happy. But let's talk a little bit about that 7th inning, because it was a glaring issue, and C.J. Abrams of the Nationals found it. He spotted it in the way that Andrew Kittredge was holding on runners last night. And by the way he was doing it, by which I mean he wasn't doing it. It put Pedro Pages in a real bad spot. It put the Cardinals in a real bad spot, because the walk by John King, first of all, walks are part of it too. They walked 8 last night, one of them intentional in the 10th inning. I don't really necessarily agree with that, but they were trying to get a better matchup for Fernandez. Walked Luis Garcia, which, Luis Garcia is not like he's a world beater, no offense, but probably in an extra inning scenario, I'm not putting that runner on for free. It's just almost like assuming the sale when Ollie Marmol does that and puts Luis Garcia on. It's like, okay, we're going to get this next guy, so no problem. But then when you compound it with a free pass, another one that was not intentional to Trey Lipscomb, that was the tough walk that Fernandez gave up to Lipscomb to load the bases, leading to the triple by Jacob Young that Dylan misplayed. I don't think you can put a free runner on there in extra innings, just my opinion. I know that you might have a better matchup, but what happens, like think of it this way. What happens if you face Luis Garcia, guy on second base, obviously. Might have been on third base at the time. No, he was on, he was on third base because of the sacrifice fly, I believe. You face a guy that either way, he's in scoring position, a base hit, you're down by a run. Okay, that sucks, but, probably a runner on first. Not the most stressful situation. Get out of it and know that you got a guy on second base to start the bottom of the 10th. You have to figure we can score a run if we start with a guy on scoring position. So even if you give up that run, game's not over. Game's not over if Luis Garcia beats you for a hit. And he's not a home run hitter, so he's probably not going to beat you for 2 runs. And yet, if you put him on base, now you have volunteered the pressure to Fernandez even more so because a hit in the gap scores 2, and now your offense needs to do more than just score the runner from second that they get for free thanks to the commissioner of baseball. Now, Goldy homered, as we know, so you would have gotten 2, which is almost all the more reason to not to treat those base runners like gold in extra innings. And that's the one thing that did not get asked today, that if I end up making it down to Busch for pregame this afternoon on Saturday, I will be curious to see if the timing is right to ask it. Last night, Ollie's postgame was like 2 minutes, and it was just there are times where you can tell you're not going to get great answers, so you don't poke the bear maybe. And look, he did. He gave a good answer on the quote I'm about to play from him regarding holding on base runners. But it was just kind of one of those nights of, what is there to say? If you want to say, soft media, it was just weird. Nobody expects a 2-minute post game, and then we're all sitting there like, oh, shoot, who has the next question? And then he gets up, and then it's it. So go in the room before you criticize that. I don't know what to say to you, but I do wonder about that decision, and almost from like a philosophical standpoint of, is that something that, because there's 2 outs, you're more willing to say, look, we have confidence in that we're going to get the next guy, but what is the risk reward of that? Because you put a free runner on base where every run counts. Losing the guy on extra inning scoring position that you get automatically doesn't lose you the game when you're the home team and you can score yours in the bottom half to extend it. Allowing a second run is more risky because it just makes the job of the offense that much harder. They have to manufacture their own run or hit a homer, which Goldy did. But that was the thing that I was thinking, I don't really know, man. Because then Lipscomb gets walked and now bases are loaded. Now it's like, well, shoot. You have volunteered the almost like the real go-ahead run and put him on base with that walk, if that makes sense. Because obviously the go-ahead run is the one that's already on base. But knowing you get one that should almost be able to be signed, sealed, delivered because he's on second to start the inning, which is no guarantee with this team, nor any team. But you feel like, all right, let's figure out a way to manufacture this guy. You can work around that more easily than you can work around the second run, which you basically volunteered to go on base. Ryan Fernandez has been nails this year, so the assumption that he's going to walk Trey Lipscomb is not on Ollie Marmol's mind. You typically manage aggressively and confidently. You don't manage for, well, what happens if this goes wrong? Because I bring up this quote all the time. The old, whether it was the coach or the GM of the Colts when Peyton Manning was there, was asked by a reporter, like, why doesn't so-and-so as the backup quarterback get any of the snaps in practice? And he said, and Peyton Manning's number was number 18. And he said, if 18 goes down, we're blanked. And we don't practice blanked. So you're not managing to practice for what happens if Fernandez walks Trey Lipscomb, the guy toward the bottom of the order. You're managing for, this is the matchup where Fernandez, whatever their data says, 9 times out of 10 is going to get that guy out because of the matchup. So that's the reason for it. I understand the reason for it. I'm just curious if that's something that it gets revisited, or they say, no, this is our process and we just didn't execute in that spot, which is true all night long. They didn't execute. They walked too many guys. 1 of them intentional, but 7 that weren't. And that'll burn you every single time, especially when you combine it with 6 stolen bases on 7 attempts. That is a perfect storm to lose you a baseball game. You saw it last night. You could score 8 runs and still not win when that kind of stuff is going on. 8 walks and 6 for 7 on stolen base attempts. So what happens in the 7th inning? John King walks Abrams. That's the last batter that he faces. It was the better matchup before you bring in Kittredge. But then Kittredge, he's got the slow delivery to the plate, and Pedro had no chance to throw out C.J. Abrams. And there was a double steal. I mean, there's just no chance later on in the inning. Later on in the game, it wasn't just Kittredge that was doing it, right? So that ends up really hurting you because it's a sacrifice fly that scores Abrams and ties the game at 6-6. So Kittredge gets the out, but he didn't do the little things to ensure that out was not a damaging one. And then, Helsley comes out for the 9th. Don't be a goofball and criticize Helsley being in that game in the 9th. There's not some voodoo magic that says he can't pitch in a non-save situation. At the closer of a baseball team, the role is tie game in the 9th at home. You're going to pitch because there will not be a save situation in the game at that point. The only way to win it is in a walk-off fashion. So there's not yes, if you happen to feel good about the matchups for somebody else in the 9th, you could save your closer for the 10th. But that I'm all about getting Helsley into that game because you want your best chance to keep it there in the 9th so you could walk it off in the bottom of the 9th. You don't want to have to go to the 10th. You're not managing for the stuff that goes wrong. You're not managing thinking, if we don't score, who pitches the 10th? No, I get the 9th done and score. That's what a winning baseball club would do. That's how you have to approach it. So don't be silly. Don't be one of those people that say, Helsley, he's not a save situation. He can't pitch. He doesn't know how. No, stop it. It was the right call. He got through the 9th. They just couldn't score any runs, couldn't get anything going, which I'm not pitting last night on the offense. They scored 6 runs. Granted, almost all of them came in the same inning, in that 3rd inning. Arenado homer. Jeff Jones up there in the press box next to me called it. The reporters up there, they'll do the yard game where you get 1 pitch per game to call yard. And if you're right, you win. It's just bragging rights. But it was a 1-0 count. Mackenzie Gore was getting behind on hitters all inning long. And lefty versus Arenado is typically, if he's got to feed you a cookie, Arenado's going to gobble it up. And I look up, I see the count, I'm like, damn it, Jeff, that's a really good call. I'm thinking, if Arenado doesn't homer here, I'm using my yard call on the next one. And Brandon, the Hummel intern for the Post-Dispatch, said the same thing. He's like, if he didn't do it there, I was going to do it on the next pitch because it just seemed like such an obvious spot. Arenado, I heard him telling John Denton in the clubhouse after the game that he didn't think it was going out. And as it was in flight, I didn't either. I thought he might have gotten under it a little bit too much. But it hit that jut out, the corner pocket, as I called it, in left field, right there by the line. James Wood, I believe, was in left last night. Jumped up, tried to catch it, and I think he was 18 inches, a couple feet away from being able to catch it. I didn't watch the replay closely, but it was barely out, 359 feet. I think it was a 0.40 expected batting average because in a lot of ballparks, that's, a ball you can catch because it's just a warning track ball maybe. And even in this ballpark, if you had jutted a little bit to the right, that would have been the case. But that wall cuts in, and it was just the perfect spot to place it. Corner pocket, 3-run shot. Mason Wins was a laser beam. I mean, just a rocket. 107.7 off the bat. I believe his 5th homer of the year and his longest home run of the season as well. That was a sweet swing, dude. That was a sweet swing by Mason. And again, that shows you how walks kill you because Mackenzie Gore walked the 9-hole man Ciani, makes that a 2-run homer instead of a solo shot by Wynn. I mean, it's just, you can go on as to how walks can kill you. And we saw it for the Nationals last night, but then we saw it for the Cardinals too. So I want to play this quote from Ollie Marmol regarding the base running issues. And I might even have to back it up a little bit further before my question because he alluded to it. So I'll splice together some of these comments so you can hear kind of where Ollie thought the game was lost last night. This is from Ollie Marmol post-game, Cardinals manager.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You score 8 against these guys. You got to be able to put them away. Very uncharacteristic of us to walk 8, 1 intentionally, but 7 free passes. That's not something we've done all year. It's actually a strength of ours, making the other side earn it. Today, we just we gave them free passes. They took advantage of it. A lot of balls that they put in play early against Sonny. led to hits, not a whole lot at people. And the combination of that and our running game cost us that game.
Sonny walk 3, very uncharacteristic of him. What do you make of his outing?
Gosh, I feel like I just hit on that. Very uncharacteristic of him and our pen to walk guys. And a lot of early contact that was made against him got through for hits.
When you touched on the run game, is that something related to holding runners, a combination of factors?
Yeah, holding runners. We if there's an area of improvement, if you look at what we've done well after starting off the year kind of slow, the defense has been good. We've been better on the bases. The running game is an area of improvement, and today it showed up in a big way. It really did. That inning looks differently there when they tied at 6-6. So the combination of that and some free passes today, you're going to have days where your guys aren't sharp and you're going to walk some guys. We've been good at that, but the running game is that's an area that one hurts. Yeah.
And that is exactly what I saw as well. To combine walks with not holding runners is a dastardly combination. That's tough, and it cost the Cardinals last night for sure. Uncharacteristic, too, like he's right. They don't typically have those types of games where bullpen, starters, everybody's just walking guys. But, again, when you're having a night like that, why put one on for free would kind of be my question in the 10th. I'm a little skeptical of that, but I think I already know, even though the question didn't get asked, I kind of know and imagine what he would say, as I've already talked about. That's a matchup that you believe, 9 times out of 10, whatever the data says, that they're going to get Fernandez to get Lipscomb out. But everybody else has been walking guys, so you don't manage that way, though. You don't manage like, well, the other players didn't execute, so Ryan Fernandez might not too, and he might walk a guy that he wouldn't normally walk. That's not how you manage, so I totally understand it, but it was that kind of night for the Cardinals, and not just in those regards, because we had the Dylan Carlson play that we still need to talk about. Now, offensively, the at-bats, the 3 strikeouts out of 4 ABs was brutal. Oh, by the way, before I get to Dylan, I just wanted to mention Jojo Romero had the weird play where he fielded a bunt, spun around and didn't throw. I thought at first he wrecked his shoulder because of the way he reacted. Something got in his eye. It was like dirt in his eye, so he held the ball and didn't throw. But he had 2 strikeouts last night of the 4 he recorded. So we've been talking a lot about Jojo not striking out guys, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. That was at least a positive to take away because they need that. They need him to be able to be wipeout again in the 8th inning as one of their setup men. So that was something that at least happened last night. But on Dylan, he was flailing on the strikeouts, bad at bats, just rough. And you talk about guys, well, if you're struggling at the plate, don't take it into the field. Well, he took it into the field. And I don't know I don't even know what to say anymore with Dylan Carlson. It doesn't look good. I don't think he is a bad player, but he is playing like a bad player because he has 0 confidence. None. When a ball is hit in his direction, it just seems like he's guessing instead of leaning on his instincts and having trust in what he does. There was a play early in the game that was gap into right center that got by him that I don't think he took a very good route on. And the one in the 10th inning was brutal. John Denton put out there 47% hit probability. But hit probability does not bake in the factors that pertain to Dylan Carlson from StatCast. It's basically exit velo and launch angle is about all that is baked in there. So there's not really consideration for where on the field it goes. And I would say a ball that's hit down the line like that, kind of tailing action from a right-handed batter, would typically be one of the tougher ones to catch. But 47% hit probability means more often than not, it's an out. So even that is not something you can use to say, whoa, see, it's not as bad as we thought it was. No, that's it. More than half the time it's an out. But again, it doesn't bake in the fielding at all. So it's honestly somewhat a useless stat. But I wish JD would have put out catch probability, but maybe that StatCast or whatever didn't have that yet. That's like an MLB internal thing, and he's an MLB.com writer, so that's why he can access the stat. I don't know what the catch probability was, but I do know this. Dylan Carlson's first step on the ball hit over his head was in. He stepped in toward home plate. I did not find a way to track down any post-game video from Davey Martinez of the Nationals, but I was told that one of the reporters who was covering his post-game basically said he thought off the bat the ball would be caught, and then he saw Dylan break, which is to say he went the wrong direction. Sweet. Like, if the opposing manager is saying that, you know it's pretty evident. Like, yeah, I thought it was going to be caught, but then I saw the outfielder in the direction he was running, and he was going the wrong way. That's not a direct quote, but that's kind of that's the vibe I got in hearing that story retold. Yep, it was awful, man. It's every bit as bad as you thought it was, and maybe even a little bit worse than that. His first step was in on a ball over his head. It's just kind of like the basics of outfield play. But I don't think it's because he stinks. I think it's because he has zero confidence, and it's not an excuse. I'm just telling you like why I think Dylan Carlson is playing so poorly. And I think I've been saying this, like this is not a new thing that I'm saying. I've been telling you on podcasts pretty openly for days and days and days. I hope they trade him because I think he needs a fresh start. It's not going to come here. If he gets the revitalization of his career, it's not coming with this club. And I think it would be best for everybody if he could find somewhere to go play. I hope he gets sent to a team that sucks because they can basically go, hey, Dylan Carlson had a 780 OPS in a full big league season at one point 3 years ago. That's pretty good. That's a 115 OPS plus. That's 15% above league average with quality outfield defense at all three spots. He can play center field, but not right now. Not the way things are going. You can't put him in the outfield at all right now. And I'm recording this at 10:30 in the morning. I don't know if the Cardinals will make a roster move today, but I mean, it probably should, right? He's got options. You could option him and then figure it out. But I don't think right now the place that it seems that he's in is one that can help the Cardinals win a baseball game today. So you're playing a man short, essentially, off your bench. That might sound harsh, but it really is how it feels right now. And you all know I'm as big of a Dylan supporter as there is. So if I'm saying it, it's not because I'm being spiteful toward the guy. Like, it's just what it is at this point. There is no spite in it anymore, to quote Death of a Salesman. I just don't think you've got a lot of utility for what he's given you right now on this roster. But that being said, I did say last night on Twitter, and this was before the misplay in the 10th. It was after his final strikeout. I said, if you're selling your Dylan Carlson stock out there tonight, I'm buying. I love a good deal. And I meant it. But what I mean by that is like, okay, his stock price is so low, like not to get too businessy on everybody, but if a stock price is down and you believe that, say, Dylan Carlson's going to be traded at some point, whether it's now or in the offseason, and a team without contending expectations could maybe afford to throw him out there. Like, I want him to be a White Sox. I want him to be a Marlin and just say, hey, could we throw him out there, shake off the rust from whatever happened at the end of your tenure in St. Louis, and be a 750 OPS outfielder again who can have confidence and play with a little swagger like Dylan can do. Remember his throw he made earlier this season won him a game, right? Like, he's got that in him, but he's a momentum player that's had the wrong type of momentum for too long right now this season. So I would want to buy the stock. Again, this is an econ lesson. I'd want to buy the stock as much of as I can because it costs a penny or, 3 pennies per share. And then later on, you resell it and you make a profit. I'm buying on Dylan because we're at the low point, right? It can't get any worse. And then the 10th inning happened. So I said, okay, now I will buy your Dylan Carlson stock because I don't think it can get lower than that. If I had to guess, he's played his last game as a Cardinal. I could be wrong. There's got to be a market for him. Like, I don't know that you can get John Brebbia at this point for Dylan Carlson. It might be the type of trade that they did with DeYoung last year where you get a minor leaguer who is not considered a prospect, but maybe there's an interesting trait that the player has. That was Matt Swanson, and we've talked about how when we do Down on the Farm, which we might skip today since I'm going over on time already, when we talk about Matt Swanson, he's got 16 saves for Springfield, but he's 25. He's not really a prospect. That sort of name that maybe that guy turns into something, maybe he doesn't. Juan Yepes was kind of like that. Wasn't old. He was a teenager at the time when the Cardinals traded Matt Adams to get him, but he was not really considered a prospect, and he was down way, way, way in the minors, and he worked his way up and got to the big leagues with the Cardinals, and now he's got 1,000 OPS with the Nationals. He was great last night. 3 for 3, sacrifice fly that scored a run. I mean, he had a great game. I think it was 3 for 3. He might have had an out later on, 3 for 4. Yeah, because his spot was the 10th inning ghost man runner on second, then they pinch ran for him. But he's been great. So maybe it's that type of trade for Dylan because you can't get a big leaguer for him. Maybe that's the case. But if I am the White Sox, I really would, especially if I'm thinking about trading Luis Robert. If I'm the White Sox, I get a massive haul for Luis Robert. I put Dylan Carlson in center field for this year because it frankly doesn't matter how bad he is. And you just see it for 2 months. And if he's terrible, then nothing ventured, nothing gained. Like, you're not going to have to give up anything substantial to get him. I want to see it for Dylan because he's a good dude. He's in a bad spot. it doesn't make him, like, you shouldn't root against a Cardinal. If you're a Cardinal fan, you shouldn't prey on the downfall of a guy. I'm not saying people are doing that out there, but it's not a spiteful thing to say Dylan Carlson probably shouldn't be in games right now for the Cardinals the way it's going. But I think there's something more in there. And so, yeah, I'd buy all your stock. If you've got it, I'm getting it for a penny now. I think from some Cardinal tweeters last night, I got it for free. He said, yeah, I'll just give it to you. It's obviously all just in jest. There's no real stock in baseball players. It's not a thing. But I'm buying your Dylan Carlson stock if you've got it. Let's talk Paul Goldschmidt, though. I think we've exhausted some of the negatives. If I missed anything, comment below on YouTube. Let me know what I missed that you think I should be talking about. I never told you guys to subscribe to the channel, but if you're still listening and you're not subscribed, by golly, subscribe. We do Cardinals content every single day. Paul Goldschmidt, number 2,000, the homer in the 10th inning, a bomb out to left, crushed it. After the game, he said he really didn't know he was, and this should not surprise anybody. He never knows these kind of details because he's so locked in. Didn't know he was on 1,999 hits when he stepped up to the plate, hit the homer. And so after he was done with his little post game, I was like, everybody walked away, and I was like, Paul, you said you didn't know. When did you then realize that you had hit career number 2,000? Like, what tipped you off? He said, well, a couple weeks ago, somebody had maybe mentioned around the All-Star break, like, hey, you're getting kind of close. And so then when I get back to the dugout after the hit, and guys are telling me congratulations, I kind of put two and two together. It was kind of funny. Like, you would expect on a day where the Cardinals lost a heartbreaker that, oh, it's Paul Goldschmidt. He's going to be, in a very stoic, kind of sour mood. Not sour, but stoic, and just focus on the team lost the game, so I can't really talk about this 2,000 hit things. But he was actually pretty good about it, man. And you could tell a little bit deep down, like he's going to relish that when the time comes. He said during the season, it's hard to enjoy it because you're in the grind. We got a game tomorrow, right? But you could kind of tell that was a cool thing for Paul Goldschmidt. And I feel great for him. I know it's not. He said this is probably the worst season of my career. But, after the season or maybe even after my career is done, that's something that I know I will be able to look back on and really appreciate how cool it is then. But it happens in a loss tonight. He's, got to say those things not because it's just like the right thing to say, but because that's how he thinks about it. He is a consummate teammate. But that was cool for Paul Goldschmidt to have in a year that's not really gone his way, to have that moment. Man, it should have been a really jubilant moment because it should have probably been the game-winning swing. But unfortunately, that is not the way that it played out for the Cardinals last night. And they're sliding. I believe they've lost 8 of their last 13. You can date back to the Royals doubleheader on that Wednesday a couple weeks ago. They're sliding, and the Cardinals are out of a wild card spot right now. That was true going into yesterday, and even more so true at this point. I believe the Brewers lost last night, so another missed opportunity to gain a game on them. Cardinals they're kind of just in neutral right now, a little bit stuck. You got the Nationals again on Saturday, Nationals Sunday. Rangers come to town next week, starting Monday, and they're not selling. You can forget about Goldy. That would have been my guy for the Cardinals to go after starter-wise. But they did lose last night, but they've won 7 of 10. They're 2 games under 500, and they're 6 games out of a wild card spot. But I think divisionally, it's even less than that because the West is tight. They're only 3.5 behind the Astros, who have stopped surging. They're 5 of their last 10, so they're kind of in the middle. The Mariners are spinning out of control. DePoto trying to make moves to fix it. But the Rangers, despite being 2 games below 500, are right in the thick of it, and they're the defending champs, so they're going to bring it. It's time for the Cardinals to find something, man. Offense, you like what you saw last night, but the sloppiness from the rest of the team, the pitchers in particular, whether it's walks or holding runners or both, that's just not what you need. They're behind the Diamondbacks now. You're a game and a half out of a wild card spot. The Pirates are coming. They're only a game behind you. So of the 6 teams that are vying for 3 spots, the Cardinals are in 5th of those 6th and only a game ahead of Pittsburgh. And then you can see if the Reds or Giants would surge. The Reds have now won 3 straight, so don't completely forget about them. They have that positive 40 run differential. It's been brutal, folks. Last week and a half or so, it's starting to kind of build on itself. Can the Cardinals shake out of it? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on last night, on where they're at, on the deadline. I think they need a trade to shake this up. I say they'll make one this weekend. I'm gonna think in terms of the stuff that'll make you Cardinals fans happy, and I think they'll make a move. Reliever seems most plausible. It may be a shakeup that sees a Dylan Carlson traded, and maybe they add an outfield bat to replace him. That's tricky, though, because they do think Edman's on the way. He didn't play last night. No down on the farm today, but he didn't play. That would be the main thing we would talk about. They had a big rain delay in Springfield, and he was not scheduled to play in the game anyway. So that's what we've got tonight for, I guess, this afternoon, this morning for B-Schaeff Daily. Appreciate you guys as always for listening. We'll be right back at it in like 12 hours with another one after Saturday's game. I promise not to wait till Sunday morning like I did this time. But appreciate you guys as always for listening. Support the Discord. Go join that. We almost have 200 members now. And channel memberships here on YouTube is what really funds this thing in part and allows me to continue doing it. So if you like the show, consider a channel membership for a monthly subscription. Appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace!